Tribute to pouring in, of course, for Martin Crowe, who died this morning after battling lymphoma. He was 53. Now, for people who don't know much about cricket, Martin Crowe really was special. 77 tests for New Zealand, 17 centuries, an average of 45, and something wonderful about the way he played the game. The former All Black Grant Fox met Martin Crowe at Auckland Grammar, where they became fast friends, and Grant is on the line now. Grant, I know you must be shattered by this today. We're so grateful for you joining us.
It's a pleasure, John.
Yeah, lovely to talk to you. I'm sorry it's in these circumstances.
Yeah, it's been a tough day.
Yeah, I bet it has. He was your mate. You met him at school.
Yeah, he was my mate, exactly.
Yeah. So were you in the same year at Grammar, Foxy?
We were, John, we were, yeah. We met on a pew in the Assembly Hall in February 1976. Can't remember exactly what date,
Wow.
but it was February. So we had a little celebration lunch, February just gone, to celebrate 40 years as mates with a butter chicken pie, a glass of malt beer and a red wine. It was a lovely, lovely day.
Oh, I bet it was. God, I'm thrilled you did that. You similar characters in a way, although no, that's not true. You're similar sportsmen in a way, because you both worked very hard at being as good as you could possibly be and trained in a singular fashion. Did you greatly admire that about him?
Oh, yeah, he had all the traits of what he was a genius. I wasn't a genius. I was a hard worker. He was a genius. I mean, look, he was driven and he was intense and he was focused. The thing that set us apart probably is he was much more emotional than me. And I think geniuses are emotional. They wear their heart on their sleeve and they're a bit different. And Marty certainly was that. But I mean, you know, I've probably told you this story, and I've said it a couple of times today because I have done a little bit of media work. But you know, as 18-year-olds, when we left Auckland Grammar, so 5 years later in 1980, we had a bet. We shook hands and brash, arrogant young schoolboys are who's going to play the most test matches for their country at their chosen sport. Well, you know, of course, it was a pipe dream. I thought Marty was more likely to than me. He might get a number, I'd probably get none. But he ended up with 77, I ended up with 46. So he won the bet on the numbers game. But I've got this marvellous print on my games room wall. It's of Lords, and there's an inscription on it written by Martin that says, "To Foxy, we both won Hogan." And it's very special to me.
Yeah, and isn't that typical of him to acknowledge that, to remember
yeah.
and to celebrate your mutual success?
Very thoughtful. I mean, the side of Marty that people don't know, and of course they're not, because they wouldn't, because it's the private side, and we know what the sports, and we saw the genius that he was, and we all went through the ups and downs, and they were mostly ups, but you know, he's a very kind, compassionate, generous man, and in the last couple of years, despite what he was battling, his thought was always for others. It was incredible, really. I mean, how he and Lorraine, the dignity with which they went through this and how they coped and their strength of character, their strength of their partnership was just, it amazed me. Incredible, really. And, you know, he was faced with the innings of his life, really, because that's what it was. It was about his life. And he never gave up, and he fought to the end. And if there's one blessing in all of this, and in the end it happened actually pretty quickly. Relatively, he didn't suffer too much. And you know, we're very thankful for that, because, you know, people who suffer this dreadful disease sometimes have a long, lingering, painful death. And thankfully, that wasn't the case for Marty.
Yeah, that is good news. When did you last see him, Grant?
I saw him on Wednesday last week for lunch. It was becoming a regular thing, and I texted him on Monday, and I was trying to do lunch Tuesday because I'm meant to be going to the golf at Queenstown next week, and he wasn't so good on Tuesday, and then I got back to him Wednesday morning, said, how about lunch Thursday, which was today, and he thought that was going to be just fine, but then I got a text from Lorraine yesterday that said that, you know, there was a bit of a new sort of site of pain, and they needed to get into the hospice to deal with that. And unfortunately, this time he didn't come out.
No. Foxy, just before you go, one thing that I think is wonderful about the end of his life is that he And you don't want to get carried away here, but he had demons because he put so much pressure on himself, and his quest for excellence was almost insatiable, wasn't it? It was almost impossible for him to satisfy his own standards. But in the end, he took stock and he realised that he had done as well as he could reasonably expect, and he was proud and settled, wasn't he, at the end?
You know, I think the word is content, John. He texts me after the double-hit lymphoma diagnosis, which, you know, really was not a good prognosis at all. Almost no one survives it. And it was a rather long text, and in the text was a cryptic message that says, "I'm at peace with it." And I had to read it a couple of times to understand what he meant. And what he meant is he was at peace with having to do this battle again with a thing he called his friend, because he'd been through it once. And he knew what he faced, and whatever the outcome, and he probably knew what the outcome would be, he was at peace with it. But, you know, the first bout with lymphoma, which he did win, he found a contentment inside him that I don't think he'd had all his adult life. Well, I'm being a little unkind, because in Lorraine, he found a soulmate. And that Lorraine wanted me, you know, to make sure that people understood that he was a loving husband, that he loved being a husband, especially to her. And that's not her words, that's mine. And loved being a dad to Emmy, you know, and they often say, and you've probably heard this lots of times, that people who've had a brush with cancer, it's life-changing for them. For those who survive, mostly for positive. They're glad they've had it because it's been life-changing. And that was the same for Marty. You know, sadly, it came back, and this was just an innings too far for him.